Thank you, Bruce. Commissioner Kimberly? And second, please. And that would be Brian. Okay. All those in favor by show of hands, unanimous. Next on the agenda is the approval of claims and purchase orders for payment. Mr. Starnes.
Minimal comments on my end. I think these are largely the usual things that we see. We've got some expenses for engineering from Hanson for Franklin Road. The beam longest to Neff payment was for some appraisal services that this commission previously authorized. We've got EPA grant-related matters and expenses related to quiet title actions that are ongoing.
Questions from the commissioners?
I'll mention, I think, I'll go ahead and stick it in now. I think last meeting there was a question about the balance of the EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant remaining. Prior to these claims, I should back up, it's a $400,000 grant. And the balance prior to these latest invoices that are in front of you is a little under $250,000 remaining on the grant. So these would take it down closer to $225,000. And we've got another year and a half on our cooperative agreement with the EPA to spend that down. But we do have some additional projects that will be firing up here pretty shortly. So I think we're on track to make good use of that money in our allotted time. So that's the snapshot for now.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah. Any other questions other comments? Questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, may I have a motion for approval of the claims for November? Motion to approve from Commissioner Sullivan. Second, please. Commissioner Kimberly. All those in favor by show of hands. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. First, Franklin Road continues to move forward a little bit ahead of schedule. The consultants under contract through Hanson have begun reaching out to landowners about potential right-of-way acquisition matters, so that's proceeding. Again, that's probably a month or so ahead of schedule, so we're well on pace to meet our targets in terms of getting those federal funds obligated for construction by making a bid package in late 18 and starting construction in early 2019. And we do have I think there was about a $400,000 gap on the construction side that was approved by the Lawrence Common Council in the 2018 budget. So that's been filled through Department of Public Works, and we'll continue to fulfill the contract that this commission previously approved for preliminary engineering. That will be the end of the financial obligation of this commission for the project, and it will then continue through toward right-of-way acquisition over the course of the next year, and then go out to bid for construction again starting in 19. So that's all on track.
Putting in
2019.
Thank you.
Construction.
Great. So just one question, Cam. In the last meeting, you mentioned that the federal funding for the Record Street piece of that project may or may not be funded. It may not be eligible, it was the word you used. Is that?
Yeah, I want to clarify something, which is the Record Street is a different project.
Different.
So not part of Franklin
Not
Road.
part
Of
of-
course,
okay.
we'd like it to link up to Franklin Road in a positive way, but it's not part of the scope of the Franklin Road project. We had, I think we've talked about a potential Record Street sort of continuation through its awkward interruption that currently exists and an enhancement. We had explored through the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the potential for federal transportation grant dollars to help with that project. The MPO has told us it is not eligible for federal DOT money. because it doesn't meet the sort of threshold numbers they need to see in terms of adding capacity. So we're actively looking for other avenues to get some grant dollars to help with the design and construction of that road. So that was a setback. We'd hoped that we could apply for a federal grant and do it similar to the Record Street project, only in a more, a little bit cleaner fashion. But that traditional DOT federal grant path is not available to us. So I think there are some other programs. We'll be looking at the state and the federal level both through other agencies, but we'll continue to think that project is important as a separate project to serve the Trades District.
Okay, so
We'll need to look for other funding ways.
So just want to make sure I got the detail right. So the connector piece of the Records Street connector, if you will, to Franklin Road, where the actual cut was discussed in
Yes.
that drawing, that is not part of the Franklin Road project.
It is not.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking for monies from elsewhere. Thank you.
We are, yes.
Question. In view of the potential that Permanent Magnet Place is going to be reworked, understand money needs to come from somewhere, but it would certainly be nice if that road work could be done prior to the completion of whatever the renovation of whatever is going to happen to Permanent Magnet property.
I certainly agree with you. I don't know that it's possible. We could explore an interim sort of punch through. Currently, I mean, not only does Record Street get interrupted, it also is a simple sort of blacktop with no curb, no sidewalk, no pedestrian amenities, no street trees. It's not a very positive piece of infrastructure. So the idea has always been that Record Street should not only be extended through there, it should be enhanced to serve the Trades District as the central thoroughfare through it, better accommodating to truck traffic, much more friendly to pedestrians, and much more attractive visually as well. So it's a decent-sized project, and as an interim step, we could explore costs to punch the road through. But I have met with Mission Mechanical on a number of occasions, and they're not dependent on the road being through there for their business and their plans for the site to work. They like the idea, certainly, but funding would be the main question there. So given that we know that DOT grants are not an option, I think it's certainly worth asking what it might cost just to simply pave that little stretch and have it go all the way through in the meantime. So we'll do that. And then it's something we can consider moving forward.
What is the anticipated cost of doing that?
I don't know yet. The bigger project, which would, again, and not only punch through Record Street, but also enhance it and add sidewalks and possibly realign it to make it flow better and also connect up to the end of the Franklin Road project, is about $10 million. That'd be a much bigger project with right-of-way acquisition, et cetera.
Bruce, are you just talking about cleaning it up and repaving it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
And that would certainly be less, but I don't know the number.
Okay. It's going to be less than 10 million, but it'll be a lot less than 10 million, I would think. Yeah, okay.
I would hope so too.
Other questions from the commissioners? Okay, East 59th.
Yes. And I appreciate the time from the individual commissioners over the course of the last few days to make sure everybody's on the same page about a couple deals that we've talked about previously. East 59th Street continues to have some interest from a potential custom plastics molding manufacturer, a local business that's looking to expand. So we'll continue to negotiate with both parties on either side of that. And in terms of the Trades District, I would also touch on some continued interest in the parcel that the RDC owns for development in a manner consistent with the Trades District plan by a good-sized mechanical mechanical contractor with a headquarters move attached to that, so we'll continue to work on that deal. Meanwhile, I did also circulate my only copy of some initial renderings of the new Mission Mechanical headquarters in the former Permanent Magnet building, which Bruce brought up here just a moment ago. Again, that's a recent deal that closed in August on the real estate. That is, Mission Mechanical is a mechanical and plumbing contractor that will be moving to Lawrence from Boone County. This will be its new headquarters, and I think the rendering show will be a good visual improvement on the building and a positive new use for that space that had been vacated when Permanent Magnet closed. We were able to assist in getting Mission Mechanical to move here by using our EPA grant resources strategically to accomplish environmental investigation in the site and clear it for use through the state. So that's something that came out of the Redevelopment Commission's pocket, so to speak. It was the use of federal EPA grant resources in a way that I think resulted in a very positive thing. I've had occasion to meet with the Mission Mechanical president and some of his other business staff on a couple of occasions. It's a bigger company than I realized. I think they have about 120 employees currently, and I think they'll end up spending a few $1 million rehabilitating that building that's right there in the Trades District. It's very consistent with the Trades District plan. It's also in the TIF and should generate some positive incremental revenue that will be captured by the Redevelopment Commission. So positive news on both of those fronts. I'd also mention, Jerry asked me to touch on a couple of other things that are not on the staff update list, so I'll go ahead and do that. One being 4423, 4399 North Shadeland. The contractor that we have under the EPA assessment grant is Bruce Carter and Associates. They did phase one environmental site assessment. They've now performed phase two site assessment work, taken some samples of soil and groundwater, done some ground penetrating radar investigation. I think they're awaiting data to come back from the lab on samples that were taken, and then we'll write and issue a report. I anticipate having that in the next week or two that will give us a picture of what, if any, impacts are on the site. We do think there are a couple of underground storage tanks related to either its prior use as a car dealership and then as the sheriff's maintenance garage that may or may not pose an issue, but this will be a good way to tell, and then we'll be headed toward a request for proposals to get the site to market. I think there continues to be some positive interest in redevelopment of the site, so we'll look to put that RFP together soon after we get the results of the phase two and get that out on the street to see what kind of proposals it brings back. We also previously talked about the former marsh on Franklin Road. I did send a letter to the former broker supporting its reuse as a grocery store. Not long after that, I got a call from the property owner saying that due to lack of interest in the market, they were going to let the contract that they had with that broker expire, and it has at this point. So the Hispanic grocer that had been a prospect, I think, dried up, unfortunately, and the owner was actually asking if I had any recommendations for other brokers they might explore. So I've sent her a couple of names, and we'll see what happens. It's a challenging rehabilitation from a redevelopment standpoint. Certainly would, again, like to see another grocery store there, and the owner of the property knows that. But I'll continue to follow up with the owner now that the broker's contract has expired, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that one. And lastly, I think I mentioned.
Excuse me, before you go, you were particularly interested in directly communicating our desire, if you will.
Well, we were going to do that to the broker.
The broker. How about doing it to the owner?
I think communicating with the owner would be just fine, yeah.
And you've already started that by
Yes.
an
So
ongoing
I sent the letter to the broker. I got a call back from the owner saying, we're letting the broker go.
Now you've got a dialogue with the owner, which is even better.
Yeah. So yes, I have contact information that I can pass on, I think.
I'd like to add that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make
Thank you,
that
Cam.
note. And lastly, I think I mentioned at the last meeting that we were aware that there was some reorganization afoot at the Fort Harrison Reuse Authority, which is sort of our counterpart centered on the fort here. And I've met directly with the president of the board there, and they've worked with charitable advisors to put together job descriptions. And so I just want to say we've been well briefed on what those changes are and what the restructuring will look like, and certainly appreciate that the communication continues to be good between the two, the city and the Reuse Authority over the fate of the fort, which is very important to the city of Lawrence. So that we'll see some changes to come there. I believe the staff picture will go from 3 to 2 in a executive director and sort of director of operations kind of structure. So we'll be continuing to keep up with those folks about how those changes go and what the personnel looks like on that end. So just to touch on that by way of update. But again, communication continues to be good.
And do you know if they've made a decision concerning where they're going to be placing the library? What is the site for the new library?
No. I think roughly yes, exactly no, but it will depend on some other development in that area. I think, broadly speaking, it will be along 56th Street between Lawrence Village Parkway and the new cut that was part of the Otis extension.
Which was where it was supposed to be. That's good.
Yes. So it would be probably to the east of a mixed-use building to be constructed on the northeast corner of 56th and Lawrence Village Parkway. So immediately to the east of that is I think,
A little off the subject, but
I think roughly where they're looking to zero in on that.
thank you.
Sure. So with that, I'm happy to move on to new business if you are.
Please.
Great. And first, we have a professional services engagement from London Woody Group. This would be for financial advisory services at a not to exceed amount of $25,000 related to making projections of revenues and debt coverages relative to the East 59th Street Economic Development Project, which we've discussed. London Woody Group and Jim Higgins in particular are the folks that helped us with the TIF expansion last year. So it's a relationship that we have and somebody whose work that we were happy with. So that's been our go-to in terms of how do we help to put this potential deal together. Again, those services would be billed on an hourly basis as they were with the TIF expansion.
Questions or comments from the commissioners?
I have several, Mr. Chairman. Remind me, the work that London Woody Group did for us last year was what?
Financial advisory services related to expansion of the TIF district, specifically identification of expansion parcels and advisory services with regard to process and approvals. They prepared the notices to landowners and taxing units, and I think helped with some projections as to base calculations and potential increment calculations.
And what was the amount of that contract?
I believe that contract was
I don't know.
somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000.
This is a corporation, a partnership? What sole proprietorship? What business is this?
It's a firm, or whether it's organized as a partnership or a corporation, I'm not entirely certain.
Can you tell us anything about the ownership of it?
I don't know that I can, other than it's an 11-member firm, and so it's really fairly small outfit. And Jim Higgins is one of the principals there, and that's who we worked with in the past. That's who authored this engagement.
Do you know if any of the owners are women or minorities?
Yeah, well, of the 11, I know that 36% of the firm is female. I'm want to speculate as to racial makeup, so I won't do that. But I do believe that there is minority representation in the firm. That's about all I would say.
What kind of representation in the firm?
I believe that there is minority representation in the firm.
In the ownership of the firm?
That I don't know.
So then I don't understand what you mean when you say there's minority representation in the firm.
Again, I would want to speculate as to that. If there's a point that you would like to make about the engagement or the services that we expect, I would ask that you make that as opposed to a Socratic sort of interrogation of me as staff, so that we can hear the point made, and then there will be a vote at which point you can make your opinion known in the form of the vote. I would prefer that we go that way.
The president asked if I had any questions, and I'm asking questions. And while I appreciate that you would like me to make a speech, at the moment I'd like to ask questions of staff. And maybe I'll make a speech and maybe I won't. Do you think that it's an appropriate question when we're hiring people to do work for us to inquire as to the ownership of their firm and whether there's minority ownership?
Do I think it's an appropriate question?
Yeah.
I think it's immaterial whether I think that's an appropriate question or
I
not.
think that's immaterial.
Whether my opinion as to whether that's an appropriate question is probably not material. Do I think it's appropriate? Sure.
Do you ask that question in considering who to recommend to us that we hire?
I do not.
How big is this company? How many employees?
I believe 11.
11 employees, and they're all owners. Then you say?
I don't know that they're all owners. I know that it's an 11-person firm. To my knowledge, there are 11 people.
Can you tell us anything about this civil judicial action filed against this company by the city of Marion?
Yes, to my understanding, there's been a legal action filed by the City of Marion against several defendants, including London Witty Group, related to a city official's misuse of public funds in the City of Marion. And as to the particulars of how this firm gets involved, I don't know. I think they were in some form, whether that's through another partner or otherwise, engaged in providing FA services, financial advisory services, to the City of Marion at the time that this impropriety was alleged to occur. As to how that led to a lawsuit against the firm, I'm uncertain, but I know that the circumstances surround improper use of proceeds related to redevelopment of, I believe, an old YMCA in the City of Marion.
And you're satisfied yourself that your due diligence as to the nature of this doesn't warrant any concern on our part in engaging this firm?
Right. What I was able to learn about that action did not give me any pause about retaining this firm for this work.
Thank you, Mr. President. Those are all my questions.
Bruce?
Has council reviewed this proposed agreement?
Yes.
And you're fine with it?
Yes.
I'd like to make a comment. While we're sitting here, I pulled up the London Witty Group 11-member team. 4 are female, 1 is African-American male. The rest are white male of the 11. Again, that's their team. It doesn't mean they're all owners. But of the 11, that is the makeup.
4 female and then one male is African male.
Correct. Just to respond to the question, for whatever that's worth.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done, sorry.
Okay, so it's,
I was just making a statement.
I don't know, you had your, I thought you were into your computer. Sorry. If there are no other questions, do I have a motion for approval of this engagement with LWG? The only other comment that I would make is that I recall, this was one of the first actions we actually took as the new commission met for.
I believe that's true.
Our new mayor, Steve Collier. And I remember Jim Higgins' presentation only from the perspective that Jim obviously knows what he's doing. And he gave me a lot of confidence in what we were doing and how we were doing it. So that's the only comment that I would have. Other than that, I really don't, other than professionally here, I really don't know Jim, but he
I
seemed
do
to.
have one other question, if I could.
Sure, Bruce, go ahead.
This would be for council. Any concern with, from your viewpoint, on the lawsuit that's been filed in dealing with the Marion City issue?
No, sir.
Thank you.
I guess I have one more question, Cam. So of the one time that we used this group last year, were there any other times that we've used them? And, I mean, the scope of it was roughly $10,000? Is that,
That was my recollection. I think we also retained Mr. Higgins to advise the city, not the Redevelopment Commission, with regard to our negotiation regarding city services payment from the Fort Harrison Reuse Authority to the city of Lawrence, primarily related to public safety services. And he was helpful in that regard as well in terms of calculating public safety rate and extrapolating that against assessed value in this area. I think we realized there's a discrepancy between the drain on public safety services, police and fire in particular, as the population, both residential and business population in this area fills in. That was, given that this entire area is a TIF and all of the revenue is captured by that TIF and controlled by the Reuse Authority, was not being adequately met with regard to the payment from the Reuse Authority for city services, so that he was instrumental in assisting us in renegotiating that in a way that enables the further provision of services in this area over time that related and that resulted in some legislative change to incorporate a formula for how that payment is calculated so that it's not a unilateral one-off payment any longer. So we do have a relationship specifically with Mr. Higgins that goes back a little ways and have always been happy with his services, yes.
And this proposal deals only with the 59th Street property, is that what?
Yes, yes.
If there are no other questions, do I hear a motion for the approval of the professional service engagement with London Witty Group?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
And do I hear a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
And by show of hands, all those in favor?
Is permission to speak on the motion?
Certainly.
Mr. President, I'd like to say that, speaking only for myself, I do think that particularly in a community like ours, the commitment to diversity of the entities with which we do business is a matter of importance. And I am distressed when staff says that he does not think that that's a question that he need to ask when investigating entities that do work for us. And I think that question should be asked, and I think it should be asked for two reasons. First, I think it's important for us to know, and I'm appreciative to Commissioner Hicks for being willing to find out information about this company that our staff didn't think it was necessary to find out.
I had the same information, and I made that clear.
With respect, I'd like to
Finish, please.
talk. Second, I think it sends a message to our community at large that diversity is important to the leadership of Lawrence. And if people aren't asked, then it sends a message that this is not a matter of importance to us. And as a member of this commission, I ask staff to make these kinds of inquiries in the future and to express to our vendors the importance that this community places on diversity. I'm one member of the community and of this body, and staff can do with my requests as he sees fit. But I want him to know, and I want on the record and in the minutes my views on this, and that to be told in answer to my questions that didn't feel it necessary to ask these kinds of questions or convey these kinds of messages is at odds with the way I think that his job should be done, and is at odds with the kind of message that I'd like to see our community send to those businesses with whom we engage. With that, Mr. President, I plan to support the motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. And now to the vote. Just need a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Next on the agenda, a professional services engagement with Kroger, Gardis, and Regas for legal services related to economic development projects. And Cam, would you like to speak to this?
No.
Okay. The commissioners have had an opportunity to read the Kroger, Gardis, and Regas LLP proposal. Are there questions from the commissioners concerning this engagement? Bruce?
Well, I would ask, what do we know about this company and what's their makeup? think that's something we need to know. And if we have the answers, we do, and if not, I would, like for them to be asked that question.
So you're asking over the entire firm?
I'm sorry?
Are you asking for over the entire firm? I think one point of clarification I would make is that this engagement is specific to bond counsel work, which I think lamentably, and I disagree with any insinuation that diversity is not important. I think if we compare the record of this administration in terms of employees and also overall minority participation in contracts, we would see that it's better than any other in the history of the city of Lawrence. So I would put that out there. And unfortunately, again, lamentably, neither financial advisory services nor bond counsel, legal counsel are diverse fields in central Indiana. So it's not as if we are bypassing firms with better diversity in favor of others. We've, in this city, worked with the competitors to London Woody that are available, Umbaugh and Crow Horwath being the primary ones as well, neither of which have necessarily superior minority participation either. So we had a relationship with Jim Higgins related to our TIF that we thought made this make sense. So we've now approved that contract. And in this regard, our normal our go-to bond counsel is Ruth Donaldson at Barnes and Thornburg, who is conflicted out of this working on this deal because that firm represents the prospective purchaser here. Brian Bosma, as an attorney, is a Lawrence Township resident, is familiar with the area, with this property, and has a long history of performing bond counsel legal services that would make him very well qualified to do this kind of work at an attractive rate that's actually less than we would normally get from Barnes and Thornburg. So if we're asking about the specific type of work, that's one thing. If you want to know about the makeup of the entire Kroger, and Regis firm, most of which does unrelated types of legal work, I'm happy to look that up for you.
Well, I would just say that, to my knowledge, the commission hadn't used this firm before, and as a new, and so in bringing in a new firm to commission, I'll go back and put my military hat on, who, what, when, where, and why. And that just gives us, or gives me some comfort as to, I mean, obviously I recognize a couple of names of the people in the firm, but that, other than that, I hadn't got a clue about, what their reputation is and how long they've been doing this or anything else. So that would just, I think that would just facilitate and speed things along if when we're dealing with a new company that we haven't seen, we don't know, if we had some kind of background on.
Okay. Well, and I understand where you're coming from, that I don't think this commission has hired this firm before, to my knowledge, at least not while I've been here. We have used this firm in utilities-related matters, both bond and otherwise, including work through before the IURC, et cetera. So the city as a whole has a relationship with this firm. It's used them before. Brian Bosma specifically has done work on behalf of the city before, and knowing that he's done bond counsel work, and we had previously used him and found him to be very responsive and at a competitive rate as well. Thought that would be a good option since our the other bond counsel we've historically used has conflicted out of this matter. I think that's why we're bringing this to you as an option, is because we do have a city as a whole, if not the Redevelopment Commission, has a business relationship with the firm and with Brian Bosma specifically, and it's found his experience with regard to representing redevelopment commissions and municipal work, bond and otherwise, to be fairly deep and helpful with regard to considering an economic development project deal like this that could include both bond issuance but also real estate pieces and approvals necessary therefore. So that struck us as a good fit, which is the background I would provide as to how we got to this engagement specifically from Mr. Bosma.
Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Stearns, I'd like to return to an answer that you gave to Commissioner Kimmery's question. You talked about the Crowe-Harvarth firm and the Umbaugh firm, and you talked about that there was no diversity in their firms either. And this seemed to me at odds with your response to my earlier question when you said that these weren't the kinds of inquiries that you made when you looked into hiring firms. And so I'm sort of confused here. How do you know this about Crowe-Harvarth and Umbaugh, but you didn't know one way or the other about London Witty?
I think you've unfairly narrowed what I said, which was that broadly speaking, in our experience working with these other firms, that there hasn't been a diverse team at play. So I don't mean to represent that there is no diversity at those firms. I mean to say that it's not to my knowledge appreciably better.
Is this important? Is this you heard what I said earlier about why I think it's important that we express to our potential vendors our concern about diversity. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
No, I agree with that. I think, and again, I would say that the record of this administration with regard to diversity, both in terms of employees, especially employees in administrative and supervisory capacities, shows that commitment in a very tangible way, as does its awarding of other and in often cases much larger contracts, such as through professional engineering services, construction, and other public works related matters. Our minority participation rate has been high, which is, I can tell you directly from the mayor, is intentional because it's very much valued. I'm saying from our experience, we're not intentionally steering this away from any kind of more diverse firm, and to our knowledge, in terms of the people that we've interacted with and worked with. The other available options in this market in central Indiana are not appreciably more diverse in any way. So
you know that for a fact.
I know that from my experience. Yes, that's all I've ever intended to say.
Okay. Well, I'm not in a position to evaluate what the city administration as a whole record is in this regard, and if it is what you say, I commend the mayor and the city administration for that. This is the Redevelopment Commission. This is the only part of the city that I have any involvement in, or responsibility for, and I continue to be disappointed that this commission doesn't have more to show for its record in promoting diversity. To Kroger, Gardis, and Regas, you said something about this being only for bond counsel. I'm not sure I quite understood that.
I mean, this engagement is specific to economic development work, and specifically calls for representation of the Redevelopment Commission in the capacity of potential issuance of bonds. So that is a specific sort of area or subspecialty, which is bond counsel, and that's what I meant to clarify.
But as I read this, there's no contemplation here that tax-exempt bonds would be issued.
Yeah, I don't know that there necessarily is contemplation of that. It could be, but I don't know that in this case that tax exempt
Mr.
bonds.
Bosma's letter here talks about two types of financing, both of which would involve taxable bonds.
Yes, and in our conversation with the economic development consultants representing the prospective company Meyer Plastics here, that has been the preferred option on their part.
And you say there aren't any firms out there in your experience that are diverse that do this kind of work.
Again, I don't think that's quite what I said. I said the area of legal services related to bond issuance is not, in our experience, a broadly diverse area in central Indiana, no.
Were you surprised, as I was, that all of the lawyers they said who would be assigned to this engagement are men?
Was I surprised?
Yes.
No.
You were not surprised?
I don't know that I was surprised, no.
One last question. You said that Mr. Bosma has extensive experience representing redevelopment commissions. What are some of the other redevelopment commissions that he's represented?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall. I had a call with him.
Did I misstate what your answer to Mr. Kimmering's question when you said that he had extensive experience in representing redevelopment commissions?
You did not. No, I had a call with Mr. Bosma early on about his experience doing bond work and working with redevelopment commissions, and there were a number that he listed going back a couple of decades and or more, and so based on that, I would say deep experience or extensive experience. Yes, off the top of my head, do I recall exactly which ones? No, I don't.
And did you consider recommending any other law firms to us other than Kroger, Gardis, and Regas when it became evident that Barnes and Thornburg had a conflict?
Did we? Well, we felt that this was a good fit given the rate and the work that Mr. Bosma had done on behalf of the city prior. So in terms of bringing it this far to an engagement for the commission to consider, I think we decided this was our best option.
And you best option, or was this the only other option you considered?
Consider bringing to the commission?
Well, when it became apparent that Barnes and Thornburg was not going to be able to represent us in this matter, did you consider Kroger, Gardis, and Regas as were they the only other people you considered, or did you consider other law firms?
We're certainly aware of other law firms like Redevelopment and Ice Miller that have approached us about doing bond work. And I think there are certainly others that we're aware of, but I think in terms of who would be the best fit for this project and representing the commission in this project, I think we quickly narrowed it to Mr. Bosma to do this work. Yeah.
And the advantage that this firm had over Krieg DeVault and Ice Miller was what?
Was one a knowledge of the personnel here at the city based on prior work that had been done for the city, an existing relationship, a knowledge of the area and the geography on this particular site, given that Mr. Bosma actually lives in the immediate area himself and was instantly familiar with this site and knew of its history. He also, as became quickly relevant, practices in the area of environmental law as well, and this is a brownfield site that's been impacted by chlorinated solvents based on historical manufacturing use of the property, which is been and continues to be an issue that is endemic to whether or not this deal can move forward. So the combination of experience representing and working with redevelopment commissions, doing bond issuance and bond counsel work and environmental experience, it made him pretty readily the primary choice to bring to the commission, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
If there are no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the engagement of Kroger and Gardis and Regas for bond and legal counsel.
Did you want to ask the same question about council having approved this? Or I'm glad to, but I think having that on the record is important. I wanted to ask Mr. Johnson if he's reviewed this as to form and compliance with applicable law, and it meets with his approval.
Yes.
Kim, I have a question. I know we're looking to meet again on December 12th or thereabouts. Is there an urgency in us approving this between now and the 12th?
Yes.
And what's going to happen between now and December 12th?
So as I think we've discussed in some detail individually, this is a deal that we had been considering based on a real estate transaction between two private parties and a potential incentives through bond issuance by the Redevelopment Commission and the Economic Development Commission based on the TIF structure. So that led us to look for a team, including Brian and Jim Higgins. In the interim, those negotiations have deteriorated, and we have sought to rehabilitate them by offering potential work in acquiring and disposing of real estate and absorbing certain environmental risk that was not attractive to the prospective purchaser, and in the hope that we could land this $10.5 million in private investment in the city of Lawrence and the employment that would go with it. So that has been met fairly favorably by both sides, but this is a company that would like to begin construction on the new facility in the spring of 2018, which means they're, especially given the current favorable interest rate environment in which we are in, which would make their cost of capital to construct that building and acquire that new equipment, now is a good time to do that. So they're looking to move quickly. There's an element of competition to this deal, given that it's the kind of deal that I think any number of municipalities in the area would like to have happen, would like to see in their own political boundaries, and would like to facilitate if possible. And so I think that there is some need to keep up with the pace here and try to patch the real estate transaction piece back together as quickly as we can so that it can be on track to start construction in the spring. Elsewise, we do run the risk of losing this prospect altogether. I do think that's a real possibility. And the need for legal counsel to help with regard to what approvals will be necessary, what kind of structure will need to be in place, evaluating potential real estate acquisition and disposition terms will be key in the interim between now and the proposed December meeting.
I mean, the reason for my question, I guess I'd like to go on the record too. I mean, obviously diversity is very important to Commissioner Sullivan. It's important to me as well, and I assume for everyone up here. If in the next 2 weeks, if we could evaluate other firms that may be more diverse for this proposal, but if you're saying that, hey, this 2 week, if we delay it 2 weeks, we're putting ourselves in some sort of behind the eight ball. I don't want to do that, but I want to be very, very clear about the message as a commission that we're sending, that we're trying to hire diverse vendors in everything that we do. And, you know, I don't want to jump on Commissioner Sullivan's back and toot this horn. All I want to do is go on the record and say that I feel just as strongly as Commissioner Sullivan does about the diverse situation, and if we can evaluate firms that do this type of bond work, if there are others, I would like to do that. But if you're saying, hey, 2-week delay is really going to be critical, then maybe not. That's why I just want to be able to evaluate that.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly do that. I do have significant concerns about the 2-week delay there, given the pace at which this deal's moved really kind of all along, but especially now that there's been kind of a hiccup in terms of the real estate piece of it. So I have to be honest and say that does give me pause. You know, I can certainly research and bring back to you other firms. I mean, we could do an RFP process for legal services. It just slows everything down by at least 6 weeks, and especially given that we meet only once a month, probably closer to 2 months, which is, you know, I can guarantee you if we went that route, we would lose this deal. 2 weeks, I have significant concerns about being able to keep up with it. In the interim, if if the commission so chooses and they want me to bring back other firms, then at the December 12th meeting, I can do that. I mean, that really is your province as the commission. I can tell you there are reasons that we brought this to you now, not only time, but I think the sort of range of practice areas and expertise is there that makes us comfortable that this is a good partner to help us put this together. But at the end of the day, that really is your call.
You know, and maybe this is, let me just say it. I personally know Brian Bosma and have for a long time. I attended his wedding to Cheryl many years ago. And he's the chairman of this firm. And I would tell you that as chairman, he wouldn't run a firm that wasn't diverse. He doesn't think in a non-diverse way. That is just not Brian in what he does. So I'm not defending him. That is not who he is. Secondly, he hasn't, let me finish. I think we're fortunate to have somebody who's knowledgeable in this area, and I didn't know until Cam told me that this was an area of expertise for him. Secondly, he's vested in the community. He wants us to succeed. And then third, he's given us some very good rates, again, according to Cam's evaluation. I'm all for diversity as well, but I think that we need to have some faith in staff and how they bring proposals to us. And I think, Cam has done that. And if I didn't know Brian Bosma at all, okay, and wanted to compare other firms, that'd be fine. But I do know him. And I would tell you I've never done business with his firm. But I do know that if hiring his firm, he'll do a good job for us and do it in the right way. So.
Mr. President, sorry to interrupt it. The reason I tried to intervene was to say that I agree with you in all respects. My first encounter with Brian Bosma was when I was state budget director in 1990, and he was appointed to the state budget committee, and we've had a very strong relationship ever since. And I would say to you that I would have the very same confidence that you do in his and his firm's commitment to diversity. I can't say, however, that I agree with you in your evaluation of staff's performance here. I think that if Kroger, Garvis, and Reedus had been asked to make as part of their proposal to us a demonstration of their commitment to diversity, we would have all been blown away. But what I object to is our going out there and not expressing the slightest bit of inquiry or we don't express to our vendors our concern and our interest about this. And if there is a motion to approve Kroger Gardens, I plan to support it because I know of its record in this community. But what I'm talking about is not so much Kroger Gardens and Rita's as it's the City of Lawrence Redevelopment Commission and are going out there and not explaining to the people with whom we are considering doing business at least the commitment that I believe this commission should have. So I think that I wouldn't be a bit surprised, but the Kroger Gardens and Rita's website has a statement on it expressing its commitment to diversity. But our staff, when asked about this, has basically said that's not the kind of thing that I look for when I'm considering. And if I know Mr. Starnes will say so if he considers me to be mischaracterizing his position on this. But that's the way I've interpreted his pursuing this, and I think he might be surprised at what he might find at not only this law firm and the London Witty firm, but at other firms. But I think it's important that we reinforce that.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve in the consideration of the time we have? We're over.
Given the time crunch that I think we're under with this deal, I will make a motion to approve Kroger Gardens Regus.
Second. Seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Gentlemen, we're running over a little bit, so there's a third item having to do with, and this deserves a little bit of explanation, Cam, of the resolution to authorize staff to pursue acquisition of property at 4351 North Shadeland and 4701 Longworth Avenue for redevelopment purposes. This ties to another project that we're involved in. Very quickly.
Or a prospective one, yeah, or I should say a couple. These are properties which are currently on the county surplus list, meaning they pass through tax sale without selling and are now on the way to having county lead and held by the county. We, as a government entity, can approach the county treasurer for acquisition of those parcels via intergovernmental transfer, which is how we've come to own and then dispose of other residential parcels that have been successfully redeveloped, especially by Habitat for Humanity in partnership with our Community Development Corporation. Chris Barnett at our Community Development Corporation is good at staying on top of that surplus list, so we know what in Lawrence happens to hit it and whether or not we want to look at acquisition to do some redevelopment activity there. So I credit him with bringing these parcels to my attention. 4701 Longworth is actually two parcels on the corner of 47th and Longworth, sort of adjacent to Richard, 46 Franklin Road, that area, an area where we've successfully had projects that have brought new residents in a positive way through partnership with Habitat for Humanity. I think Chris, in his capacity, sees these as good opportunities for new residential development and or rehabilitation, and has asked that we pursue acquisition from the county treasurer. This resolution really is just to authorize me to ask the treasurer for a price and terms for which would, I think, be approved later once I get them. So I would like to go to the treasurer with the understanding that the council, that this commission supports my asking with regard to acquisition. So that's what that is. The other parcel, 4351 North Shadeland, is nearby 4423 and 4399 North Shadeland. It's on the corner of Shadeland and Ferris, and actually abuts a large parcel owned by the Cato Family Trust, which, again, in conversation with Chris, the Community Development Commission, we see as a good prospect for affordable multifamily development. And this is a parcel that connects it to Shadeland Avenue, the main thoroughfare through there, and it would be really a more of a strategic land banking type of acquisition so that we could hopefully get an affordable housing developer interested in the 15 to 18 acres behind it to support a decent scale affordable housing development that would be a positive addition in terms of new residents and density to the area. So that same kind of thing there, just if there were a resolution from the council saying we support you inquiring about the availability, price, and terms for acquisition of this parcel, I would appreciate having that when I go to the county treasurer.
What's the estimated acquisition cost for both properties?
Generally speaking, county surplus properties per parcel via intergovernment transfer are $500.
Thank you.
So I would anticipate that, but sometimes the price can fluctuate depending on the delinquency.
I have a approval of a resolution to authorize staff to pursue the acquisition of properties at 4351 North Shadeland Avenue and 4701 Longworth Avenue for redevelopment purposes with an estimated acquisition cost of approximately $1,000.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Are we concerned about environmental issues on 4351 Shadeland?
Potentially. I do think there's a gas station in the area. Before we would close or actually follow through with acquisition, we would have Bruce Carter and Associates under our EPA grant perform a phase 1 environmental site assessment, both as due diligence and likely a phase 2. We get access through the county to take some samples, and that would be part of the consideration prior to closing. And I think, as council just pointed out, that you don't have a written resolution in front of you. This is really just a sense of the commission vote to say we support looking to get some more information on these parcels from the county.
Mr. President, so moved.
Second. All in favor? Show of hands. Aye. Next, we have whether or not, a determination of whether or not we need a December meeting of RDC. You're going to have some input for us this time.
Yes, and I think I've talked to most of you individually about specifically the date of December the 12th at 4 p.m. I think everybody I've talked to has said that date doesn't present a problem. It's hopefully before the holiday rush season. Specifically, it's probably important that we meet to consider dedication of some utility easement property along 7600 Pendleton Pike and the associated parcels, which will enable storm sewers to be moved from underneath the main body of that site along the western edge, which would enhance its developability. So it's a good thing, but we'll need to put together a written resolution for you to consider an approval of end of the year claims kind of thing. So I anticipate those will be the main agenda items, but I do think it's important that we meet because the utility superintendent has expressed to me a desire to go out to bid on that utility project in the area in January.
Proposed meeting of December 12th. Are we okay for that?
4 p.m. usual time.
4 p.m.? And the room is available?
That's fine.
We'll double check that, but yes.
Okay,
I
thank you
would
very much.
anticipate that it
So
will be.
everybody's okay with that?
We need a formal motion on that, or are we good?
Yes.
So moved to move it to December 12th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. Any other business to come before the commission this date? No, okay. Is that Dave Beagle? Okay.
Mr. Clark, I don't know who that is yet, do you?
No. Okay. If there is no other
No,
business,
there is.
excuse me. You do. Please state your name and where you're from.
It's a long story. Can you hear me okay? My name is Dave Bigo. Just to let you know, I was born on the east side, well, actually on the south side at St. Francis Hospital, and my mom and dad, when I was a young kid, bought a house over here at 52nd Franklin Road. And is that where the March story was that you talked about?
I'm going to have to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Could you limit your remarks to just, why don't we say 3 minutes? By the way, I've read your book, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
We're over time.
I know. But the reason I want everybody to know that I grew up on the east side and I lived here until I was 10. My dad was transferred to Fort Wayne and I ended up back in Indianapolis back around 1986 and that. And lived out in New Pal at the time, but belonged to Maple Creek Country Club. And my kids all went to Holy Spirit on the east side and that. And I now live up in Fishers. But in 1989, I started a cleaning company on the east side, cleaned my insurance agent's office space about the size of this room, and today we're in 41 states, and we have a supply company, we got a small security company, we got a manufacturing company, and we own Maple Creek Country Club today over at 21st and between Midhofer and German Church. And I bought it back in late 2007 to save it from destruction. We had been members there, and our kids all learned to play golf there, and we left when we moved up to Fishers. And a few years later, they sold it. The members sold it to a group of guys. They weren't doing anything with it. And in 2007, they were going to sell it to a developer and tear it all down and build homes and apartments on it. And if you're golfers, you should know it's Pete Dye's first 18-hole golf course. And so we're trying to get it designated as a historical site. But anyway, living so much on the east side and having business on the east side, and I remember back when I was a kid how vibrant the east side was. It was the Carmel of those days, or the Fishers of those days. And I want to see the east side come back. And it really frustrates me to see that Washington Square Mall is in trouble and other things are in trouble. And then if you go north of 70, along 38th Street and 42nd Street and that, we still have a ways to go. And some of that impacts the city of Lawrence as you get up north and that. So what I'm trying to do, and I'm working on the governor and also the mayor of Indianapolis to build an interchange at I-70 and German Church Road. And you don't know Tom Crouch, you probably know Tom. He's with me on this because he sees it as a corridor to bring commerce north up into the city of Lawrence area and up into his area, and then south down into the Washington Square Mall, and redevelop the far east side and make it just a vibrant part of Indianapolis again. And I would appreciate any help from you that you could give me in convincing the governor and the mayor. And if you'd like to sit down and talk about it sometime, I'd be happy to do that and kind of go through the process with you. The governor's introduced me to his guy that oversees NDOT, and I'm working on getting back with the mayor. I talked to him several months ago, but I think it's important because I think the east side of Indianapolis is great, whether it's south of 70 or north of 70, and I think we got to do things to bring it back, and that's what I'm working on, and that's kind of my life. And he read my book. It's called The Devil at Our Doorstep, and if you'd like a copy, I'd be happy to give you a copy. I've got some out in my truck, but in growing my company to the size it is today, I beat the biggest union in the country. I hope you're not union guys. The SEIU, they wanted me to sign a neutrality agreement that would take my employees' rights away to a secret ballot election, go to card check and force unionize them, and I wouldn't do it. I was the only major cleaning company. I had a 3-year battle, and I beat them. And I've written 2 books. And I did it for my employees and for this country. And I just get involved, and I like to do things that make things prosper. And I'd like to see the near to far east side prosper again. Okay?
I hate to, you're going to have to stop. There's people waiting outside. We've got your message. Cam Starnes is the economic development, which is exactly the approach that you're taking to this, I think. He is the director of economic development for the city of Lawrence. Please, I hope you get to know him.
Okay.
Appreciate you stopping by, and Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and I know your mayor too, and.
Good.
By the way, he is related to our sales manager at Maple Creek, and that's why I ran out for a little while upstairs to see if the mayor was in, to say hi for our sales manager.
Very good. It's good to see you.
Thank you, guys. Great job
you.
tonight. Thanks.
And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
And all in favor? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Interesting.